Okay, let's talk about one of the biggest topics of American life, home ownership. Um, you may have heard that dear leader, porn star Humper, floated a 50-year mortgage. The moment I heard it, um, I just let out an exasperated "what the fuck." Um there are so many problems that are inherent in the housing and construction system now, like Zorhan's communist grocery stores. They don't solve any underlying problem. This 50-year mortgage does nothing to solve a damn thing about how expensive it is to build a home in America, especially in certain districts. Okay. Um, so I dove right into, as soon as I heard the somebody talking about it, I have a tab open, so you don't have to have a tab open, of Trump's True Social feed, and a couple of other wackos social media feeds. I keep them in a separate sandbox and let them run in the background. I keep an eye on them. Coffee is good this morning. So I went up there, and yes, certain shit, it's right there on his True Social feed that he thinks he solved housing affordability because he is going to initiate the 50-year mortgage. Okay. What does it solve? Absolutely nothing, including lowering monthly payments. It doesn't do anything for that either. I mean, when I'm saying a 50-year mortgage does nothing, like, I spent a good 2 hours and 45 minutes yesterday digging into this and reading article and article, reading the Financial Times, the Federal Register, but bunch of wonk sites, and to tell you that 50-year mortgages don't make any sense, that's kind of an understatement, because man, they're brutally stupid. Okay. Um, like, the mortgage industry is already, hitting the crack pipe hard and releasing these press statements, like one that came from Iconic Mortgage, quote, extending the mortgage dramatically from the status quo of 30 years to 50 years would shrink the monthly payments substantially. No, they would not. Okay. I'll get into injecting money into the housing system and why this is completely wrong more in a minute. But every time in history where we've injected more money into the housing system, the only true outcome, the only reliable outcome, is that housing got more expensive every time. Oh, I'm losing control here. Hold on. There we go. Trying to adjust my pillow so my back isn't so sore. I got back to exercise yesterday. I did a half hour on the exercise bike, first time since surgery. So, milestone. Yay! Except today I'm pretty sore. um, the obviousness of the downsides and the risks of a 50-year mortgage should be, like, glaring to most people. But reading the internet yesterday, people just went like, oh, you give me an easy out, I'll call it a solution. And it's not. It's just not. One thing is that you're going to pay substantially more money in interest. And I'll get into the actual figures as I pulled some scenarios, um, did some graphing, and the accumulation of interest. What a 50-year loan does is screw the buyer, screw the signee to the mortgage, and gives a cash cow to the mortgage issuer. Okay. And of course, the mortgage insurers are issuers, not insurers, but the issuers are guaranteed in various mechanisms by the federal government. So what risk are they taking in reality? No, this is a handout to mortgage issuers. It doesn't help the people who get the mortgages. The problem is once you rejig the table from 30 years to 50 years, there goes your equity. Okay. It takes so long to start building equity in your home because of the way the interest table works on a long-term loan. Okay. This is just compound interest over time. Okay. You're always paying your note rate on the balance of the note every month. Okay. At the beginning of the loan, most of your payment goes to interest. Toward the end of the loan, you're paid off your interest, and more and more and more and more is going to the principal. You don't really start cracking into the principal of your loan until you're about 12 to 15 years into the loan, or you've paid ahead like my wife and I did. During the pandemic, we were so cash flush, we just threw money into our mortgage like crazy. Now we're so far ahead on the mortgage. Now you can see how much of the principal we're paying off now than versus just 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Okay. You stretch out the mortgages to 50 years, you'll develop equity so close, you'll do long-term damage to the housing market and the move-up housing market. Because remember, in America, people love to own a home for, I think the average is about 12, 13 years. Then they'll either refi to get a better rate, depending on where the cycle is, the economic cycle and the financial rate cycle is, or they'll sell the home and they'll move up to, something bigger, better location, whatever they want, whatever they desire. Uh, you put 50-year loans in, you will destroy the move up market and the resale market. It will be obliterated overnight. Okay. You won't have enough equity in your home during the period of this normal first hold, you know, new buyer, young buyer. They get into the mortgage, like I said, for a dozen or, baker's dozen years. At the end of the period, they're going to have only a few dollars of equity. There's going to be no financial leverage for those people to move on up. Then you've got the qualifying margin. Okay. The qualifying margin does not go down. It goes up on a 50-year note. If you don't have a high credit rate, not only are you going to be paying a higher interest rate, you're going to be paying interest over a longer time period. None of this is good for you, the mortgage buyer. It will lower monthly payments. Again, no, every time we've injected money into the system, it results in higher markups. The real estate agent, the sellers mark up the price of their existing homes. The builders jack up the price of newly constructed homes. The prices follow the money. Okay. And if you think you can inject, a few $100 billion more through a shady loan period extension scheme, and that's going to make prices go down, you've got it ass backwards. You've got it totally ass backwards. Like, I'm worrying about your arithmetic skills. Um, it's being argued that it would broaden access for non-qualifying buyers in high-cost cities. My hypothesis is no, it will screw those people because there's more money on the table. If you extend a loan out for 50 years, why would the builder build something? Let's say the builder is targeting, and we'll use round numbers just to make it easy. They're going to build to a sale price that results on a 7% note, which is about a current note rate. We're going to work that out to about $2,000 a month in mortgage payments. Okay. Do you think a builder is going to build a home if you now suddenly have more room in your mortgage payment, you could afford 2,000 under a 30. Maybe you can afford a 2,700 monthly payment under a 50-year note. The builder's going to build it and not try to capture that increase of your affordability, your ability to pay those monthly payments. They're not going to try to take that as profit. History says that's exactly what they'll do. It's even some of the problems with like Section 8 rental subsidies. The higher you jack that up, the higher the corporate landlords just keep increasing the rent. You put more money in, they want to suck more money out. That's the way the system has worked for decades. Um, when I did the long term math, all I see is fallback for buyers. I don't see any leap ahead for buyers whatsoever. Um, and I think in the end, it could put some buyers in even a worse position because they think they're doing what their parents did or their older, relatives did, or maybe they're the youngest of siblings, in a large age gap sibling set. Um, and they go, oh, they did this. They bought a home. They built wealth. Okay. You're not going to build wealth because your house is going to be slightly more expensive. Um, you're not going to gain the equity over time, especially at the first end of the first decade, because you need a minimum of about 10 years in a home to build up an equity to give you the mobility you need. The mobility is directly correlated to dollars available to move to somewhere else that you desire. Okay. Um, you're going to have a slower equity buildup. You're not going to be building up wealth like your parents or your older relatives. You're going to have a higher lifetime cost to your mortgage. That means over time, the house costs you more than ever. Um, and then you got to realize that the lenders aren't going to treat a 50 like a 30. Okay. They don't treat 20s and 15s like 30s. Okay. I've had friends that later in life, they wanted to move to a nice place, on the coast, and they need a little mortgage, but they don't need a lot because they still work and they have income. They'll take a 15-year note and pay it off real quick. They'll pay it off in 8 or 9 years. Okay. Um, Getting a 15-year loan is a lot less tedious than getting a 30 because it's a shorter time period and it's a shorter risk period for the bank or whoever buys the loan downstream. Okay. There's less risk when you have less time on the table to worry about. 50 years, that's the majority of somebody's life. Okay. That's usually their entire working life. So you're going to sign one mortgage. And this is the scary part. Mortgages are already below one on average for a working family. Not everybody owns. A lot of people rent in this country, not like Eastern Europe where most people own. Um, and I'll go over the home ownership rates here when I scroll down. But the the home ownership rates, and the equity build and the wealth building all slow down under a 50-year scheme. Uh, and the banks are going to be a lot more paranoid about who they issue to. They maybe even be getting into people's medical history. Why do you want to give a 50-year loan to somebody with a history of a heart problem? I mean, how do you calculate risk over that long of a period? You're not dealing with a legal entity of a corporation. You're dealing with somebody's life, someone's lifespan. When you tell them half their life, and on average, their entire working life is going to be tied up into one note. I think the risk pool really changes. And of course, from the reductive, nationalist idiots, they're not taking any of this into account. They just see this as a gimmick to go, oh, my mortgage payment will be cheaper. Yeah, but your wealth capture throughout your working lifetime is going to be a hell of a lot less. your affordability, availability of housing stock, all that's going to go down because you're going to trap people in their homes. They're not going to be reselling, like I said, after that Baker's dozen year period. They're not going to be reselling. That means less inventory out on Zillow and on MLS. Less inventory, less availability, less opportunity for home ownership. That's what 50 years is going to pay. Now, the only time the 50-year note would make sense is if you're financing a house like my wife and I used to finance cars. We just, like the last 3-4 cars, we just went to the bank, got a cashier's check, bought the car for cash in one payment or one check, whatever. But the way we used to do it is whatever the cheapest 5-year loan was available, we just take the 5-year loan and we pay it off in 2.5 years, saving a bunch of interest. Now, if you take like if you're self-employed or you're an investor and you're waiting for your cash out or whatever, why not take a long loan? Who gives a shit? The bank will give it to you. Who cares? Then you could pay it forward once you get cash available. But that's an outlier scenario. That isn't the main way, the main line people get into home ownership. And anybody selling you that, they're selling you a bucket of bullshit. Um, and my big fear is the 50-year loan ends up being yet another way that the ultra wealthy can perform rent seeking. Okay, we already have your clause into you for 30 years. Okay, and I'll give you an example. I did the math on this one. Let's say we're buying a house for $600,000. Wouldn't be here unless you lived way inland in one of the remote towns. But you're going to buy a home for $600,000 on a 7% note. Okay. On a 30-year loan, you're going to pay $39.92 a month, $39.92 a month, and you will pay over the life of the loan a total of $837,000 in total interest. Okay. Now on a 50-year loan, your monthly payment is $36.10. That's just a $380 difference a month. $382 less a month. But over the life alone, instead of paying the 30-year total interest of 837,000 K on a 50-year loan, that same 7% on 600K, you will pay $1.57 million in interest. Get it? See where I'm going? Okay. You are going to pay nearly double the interest you would on a 30-year loan. Okay. You did pay 837. Okay. Now you're paying an extra $729,000 in interest over the life of the loan. How is this a win? You're only saving $382 a month. So you can almost double the amount of interest cost in the note. This is underhanded. This is backstabbing finance. My friends hit me up on Discord. I love when people find their Discord messages like a week later. Hey, dude, I totally missed this. We were talking about the elections. You missed my last couple of notes. Okay, here's another problem. You have slower amortization on a 50-year loan. That means your refinancing gets harder. Okay, you can't get into an expensive loan hoping you can refinance later because you'll have less to refinance with. It's the same house transfer. You want to buy up, you want to be moving on up like the Jeffersons. Okay, you're so slow in building equity. Your loan is so slowly amortizing. You're not going to have the money in hand at that sweet spot period of a dozen years. It's not going to exist for you, the new buyer or the young buyer. It's not going to be there. I what would actually make housing prices go down? Well, obviously building more homes. Okay. But we can't build homes when you have literally tariffed every fucking thing in the universe we need for materials to build a family home in this country. You've tariffed everything. It's not just the softwood lumber coming from Canada. You've done tile. You've done quartz and granite for the countertops. You've done aluminum and steel for all your parts. Copper, all your wiring's more expensive because of fucking tariffs. You want to make home ownership less expensive? Get rid of your stupid tariffs. That would take 5 minutes to make homes more affordable to build. But are we going to do that? Obviously not. Obviously not. Okay. Now, we're, for the most part, unless you're the most affluent and the most liberal city around, that would be Palo Alto. Super liberal, more liberal than Berkeley by the polling. They are NIMBY, 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 NIMBY. They won't shut the fuck up about being NIMBY. The rest of us have gone YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard. Okay. Like neighbors are building ADUs, granny houses in my neighborhood. Some of them are done really nice. They fit in with the lots real well. You can barely, they just look like a garden shed or whatever, but it's a full ADU. People are expanding housing, whether cities like it or not. Okay. And the state gave us permission to build where we want, when we want. We're more like Texas when it comes to housing builds now than the way we used to be. But if you want to reduce both homeownership and rental costs, you just need more places to live. That's just a fact. Okay. And yeah, having the YIMBY laws passed, those help too. Because if you're just going to have policy bottlenecks, permit bottlenecks, lawsuit bottlenecks, that's the problem in Palo Alto. They can't build a fucking thing. They couldn't build a 4-up apartment complex for low-income seniors on an empty lot because of these damn NIMBY dudes. They're just rich dudes that just sue the city because all they want is single-family McMansions. They don't want the poors near them. And again, they poll more liberal than Berkeley. Explain that. So unless you're going to build more housing and build more housing in areas that people can safely and conveniently commute to work, or we're going to build satellite locations out in, the Netherlands, especially here, inland valleys, up north, have the workplace be remote offices. So not everybody has to be around the big cities, because you try to pack everybody into the big cities, you're not going to get any costs, any cost reductions. There's prices are going to keep going up and up and up because you all want the same housing in the same location, buying the same materials in the same counties, and you're trying to stuff everybody in one place. That's not a recipe for affordability. Building near transit is the hot thing right now. It's both good and bad, because when they say build near transit, they also mean building by the highway. Well, building next to noisy places like trains and highways drives people crazy. So it's a mixed bag there. Getting rid of junk fees on mortgages, because there's a ton of junk fees on your mortgage, has been the whole time. Every house I've built, some of the fees they throw on your bill are just absurd, and the cost of those fees are absurd. Get rid of some of them. That would help us. Stop penalizing side help for first mortgages. If your parents or your grandparents or a rich uncle help you out, I don't know why that has to be a problem for the bank and the IRS. If you get help with your first mortgage, and I say the same thing like student loans. One of the guys I used to work with, my wingman, or I was probably his wingman. um, the first Christmas we worked together, he texts me like late Christmas Day, and he goes, "You won't believe what just happened." And I go, "What?" And I thought it was like a cool gift from his parents. No, it was from his uncle. His uncle walked into the Christmas party with a check and paid off his student loans in one payment, and that gave him the runway to go to a great machine learning master's degree program, which he graduated from a few years later. So, yeah. So if you're getting help with your first mortgage or your relatives knocking out your student loans for you, I think that should be a freebie. And if you want people actually own more homes, stop complaining about um, stop complaining about the financial help like it's some, you know, they're getting away with something. They're not. It's just you want to penalize them, but you also want them to be homeowners. You want to penalize them for going to college, and you want them to be permanent debt holders, usury, victims of usury. Doesn't make any sense to me. Um, yeah, and like the amount using that 600,000 on a 7% note again, you're only dropping the on a 50-year note. You need 51.7% of median household income still with a 50-year note. That's only down from 57.2 of median household income under a 30-year note. Okay. And when you add the taxes and insurance, the property taxes and the insurance, yeah, you're talking about in a 30-year note, loan payment, taxes and insurance, you're talking about 66.9% of your household income. On a 50-year note, that falls to 61.4%. The traditional target is 28 to 36%. This is 61 to 66% all said and done. 61% on a 50, 66 on a 30. That's double of where it should be. So how does the 50-year mortgage fix anything? What underlying premise does underlying problem does it, what premise does it address, and what problem does it solve? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? I mean, this is a horseshit policy. This is a really terrible horseshit policy. It doesn't do what the clown show thinks it does. I mean, you become an annuity for the bank on a 50-year loan. Okay. Like I said, the 30-year loan interest is 10 years of a median household's entire pre-tax income. A 50-year loan would be 18.8 years of a median household's entire pre-tax income. Your costs go up, not down. Arithmetic, people. It's like Murray Gell-Mann, the famous scientist, polymath. He's the reason we built Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, because he understood, along with the Israeli colonel. I think the Israeli colonel miscounted the number of quarks, but he understood quarks were what was inside the proton and the neutron. Um, Murray Gell-Mann said something, you know, incredibly intelligent, because he usually said things incredibly intelligent. He was a very, very, very smart man. Um, that he didn't understand the climate change deniers, because their argument was a violation of simple sixth grade arithmetic. If you have three variables in an equation, A, B, and C, and you let one of the variables completely overwhelm the other two, then you're going to try to fix the variable that caused the problem? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. This is kind of this 50-year mortgage is kind of that logic. We're not going to fix anything. It doesn't make any sense, but we're going to we're going to try to sell it to you anyways, like it's the grand fix, and I've saved you. Remember, every authoritarian, every dictator has a savior complex, or at least a great savior marketing program. That there's problems in the world, they're dire, they're unsurmountable unless you have me, the dictator. Then I can solve all your problems. Now, do they actually ever solve anybody's problem? No. They make their lives worse and worse and worse. But that's the marketing scheme they continuously go on. Oh, here's a problem. Here's a major problem. All the underwriting standards for your mortgage would have to change with a 50-year. Okay. Who is going to underwrite the mortgages? And this may be not the world's most solid question, because I'm thinking about the mortgages the way they used to be owned and backed, and now we have CDOs, synth CDOs, the total horseshit casino thing that dragged the whole economy down in 2008. But if you're going to still treat mortgages as a real financial transaction with surety, inspection, title, guarantee, yada, 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 you're going to have to rewrite the underwriting book. It's not going to be the same program. And I guarantee you, when they redesign and re-level what underwriting standards have to be under a 50, less people are going to qualify for mortgages. That's going to be the outcome. Because remember, this is going to grab when you include your taxes and insurance on top of your payment, this is going to capture 2/3 of your income over 50 years. You don't think the underwriters are going to want to be more careful on who and who does not get a loan? Because they already saw in 2009 what happens if everybody stops paying their payments. Okay. They saw what happened when valuations crash. This happens again, especially under this scheme. It'll be far worse than it was last time. Yeah, because your traditional target is 28% of your gross monthly income. They started stretching it as housing got more and more expensive. They've stretched it all the way up to 36%. Okay. And this is coming from FHA. This is coming from Fannie and Freddie. This whole system of how much money is balanced with risk, how much money should be issued to a mortgage versus the value of the property, versus the income of the family, versus the credit history of the family. All of those things are going to change. Um, oh yeah, and here, here, this is one of the issues that I went wow when I found it. A lot of the mortgages get backed by Fannie and Freddie. Okay. But there's an upper ceiling limit that's written into the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's laws that were put in after the 2008 financial crisis. The upper ceiling for conventional loans is 43% debt load for the mortgage. Okay. We're already above that. Now they want a scheme that will send it higher. Who backs the mortgages if none of the mortgages qualify under Freddie and Fannie? Anybody stop to think about that for a second? How dangerous that would be? And once the traditional system starts falling apart, then you're going to get another countrywide mortgage. Okay. Remember the robo-signing scandal? They told you they could read a 360-page mortgage packet in 16 seconds and approve it. They didn't care what they approved. As long as the transaction went through and somebody cut them a check, they didn't give a shit what happens to the mortgage. They didn't give a shit what happens to the family they sold the mortgage to, what happens to the property. None of that mattered. Running the casino mattered. Okay, so as you beat down the recovery from 2008 and you start replacing it with 50 years of bullshit, okay, all these norms get screwed up again. And then you can screw it up so much that people will not underwrite or back your notes. What happens to the system then? All comes down like a house of cards. I mean, 43% is your Fannie and Freddie cap, and you're already pushing 61%. Yeah. Here's the soul crushing math. Ready for the soul crushing math here. There's a structural problem in the mathematics for this idea. On a 30-year note, to get to you, remember I told you you need money if you're going to do that move up or you're going to refi, you need a little equity built up in your home. After years to 20% of equity under a 30-year loan, that's 11 years. I told you 12 to 13 is the sweet spot to move up. There's a reason for that. Because in 11 years, you got 20% of your equity on average. That gives you the money velocity to go into refinancing or go into a bigger, better location, whatever you're desiring for your first step up home. Okay. The number of years under a 50-year note to achieve 20% equity is 22 years. You went from 11 years to get 20% equity to 22 years. Okay. That's what I meant when I said you just destroyed the resale market. That first move up bump market, moving on up to the top, that whole scenario. No. All your high end condos, all your step up condos, all your bigger than average homes that people want to move into, when they're making their sweet spot money in their late 30s, to like 50s. That just gets trounced. I mean, that just gets waylaid. There's nothing left there. Now, this is where it gets depressing. Years until 50% equity in your home. Under a 30-year loan, it's 20 years. Okay. You've paid off 50% of the principal, and you now have that as working capital equity. Okay. In 20 years, under a 30-year note. It's 38 years, just under 38 years with a 50-year note. You won't achieve half equity for 38 years. That's longer than the entire loan term now. Get it? The math is so painful on this idea, and people, oh my God, it will make my mortgage payment cheaper. Yeah, but tariffs won't make the house construction cheaper. Okay, paying another $790,000 in interest on $600K, another $790,000 on the $600K note value. Yeah, that really helps you. Yeah, SoFi says homeowners today are typically in their homes for about 12 years on average. There's another point of data. Okay, you're not going to have the equity in the home, so how the hell are you going to move up? This 12-year on average, and then we move somewhere. That's done. That dies the day they start making 50s the majority of the notes. In 2024, the average mortgage balance, not the note, but the balance on the note was $252,505 in 2024. So those low cost regions in the Midwest and in the South really drag that average number down. I see. Because I bet you it's much different in like South Florida, New York, Cambridge, Boston corridor, San Francisco Bay Area, I bet the balances are much higher here than they are in the compared to the national average. Um, yeah, we went over several angles about talking about the duration of the notes. Yeah, your debt to income starts getting skewed, especially where costs are today. Um, you're not going to qualify. You're going to be non-qualifying mortgages under the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau caps, um, and I don't see Congress changing those limits. So you're just going to be running the majority of the notes will be non-qualifying. That's going to relate to another problem. The affordable monthly payment isn't the point. It's total cost of ownership is the point. And they're going to double your cost of ownership and then tell you they're giving you a win. This is like donut holing home ownership. They love doing this and it doesn't make a damn bit of sense. And I can't get away from the fact that this extends the credit period so long and it harms refis and move up ownership such a vast degree. um I don't know how any trade association or home builders confab would agree to this or say it's a good thing. Oh, another way you want to make housing actually cheaper: ban corporations from buying residential family housing. Boom. Okay. Stop redistricting residential homes, especially in nicer neighborhoods, and selling them to for-profit hospitals as hospital wards. Yeah, that's been happening around here for years. We have actual hospital wards in our neighborhood because you complain about the cost of home ownership and affordability in our city. Then you complained about how the bank screwed up the system. But then you turned around and rezoned residential districts so for-profit hospital chains, some owned by private equity, can start buying up residential properties and turning them into commercial properties. And that somehow adds to the stock available, the inventory available of residential homes. No, it doesn't, you fucking idiots. They did it anyways. Um, and this surprised me. Romania leads planet Earth in home ownership. They don't run very much in that country. 86% of the people own their homes. Slovakia, 94%. Croatia, 91. I actually have been looking at Croatia, maybe to buy uh, a small condo in one of the cities or a little townhome, something like that. Have a place to hang out. Ukraine war kind of dashed that idea, but I was seriously shopping in the lockdowns for homes in Croatia or Spain. Um, didn't realize Croatia, 91% own their homes. Hungary, 90% own their home. Poland, 87%. Lithuania, 89%. Bulgaria, 86%. Um, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, Latvia, they're in the high 70s. Um, Germany is a high renting country, 48% ownership. Uh, the lowest in the world for home ownership, and I already knew this, was Switzerland. It's only 42%. The highest is Singapore, high 90s. And that number is skewed in Singapore because the way housing actually works in that country, including public housing, there's not rent seeking isn't a thing there, like it is in many other parts of the world. Yeah, so I went. Okay, so yeah, I went through the home ownership. We're in the middle. Um, I don't see necessarily have a problem with rentals as far as housing policy goes. I just have a problem with rent seeking, which is a totally different thing. Um, but here's an interesting thing is they're really selling this 50-year note thing as a way to help lower income but still can afford a home or first time buyers buy a home. Um, I don't see that necessarily as true because your housing data says something a tad different. Okay. Homeownership is very skewed as you go through the income data from the census and Fred. Okay. If you're in the lowest quintiles, is the five sections. Okay, that's a very common breakup. But when you're studying economic factors, you break them up into the five quintiles of the economy. The lowest 20%, the home ownership rate is 44%, versus the highest 20%, 87% of the highest quintile own homes. Okay. So I think this 50-year mortgage, because one of the scenarios I said is you do have a lot of capital, but it may not be in the bank right now. You may be waiting payment or maybe in a multi-year development deal or software licensing deal, whatever, and you're waiting for your money to come in. So you may take that cheaper payment under the 50 just to pay it off faster once your money comes in. Um, when the highest 20% have an 87% home ownership rate, um, yeah, you can see where the benefit of this policy would go and where it wouldn't go. Um, and also, when you look at race in America, the numbers do get skewed. Who owns a home? Non-Hispanic whites have the highest home ownership, almost 74%. The lowest is black households. They have 45.9, so 46% roughly. Um, White low income ownership is 58.4%. Okay. And that's the highest, followed by Asian low income is 40% home ownership rate. So I don't think when you do the math of real affordability and real costs over time, and you look at who can afford a home and who can't, and who obviously can more easily afford a home, the upper two quintiles, I don't see this policy helping anybody in the lower quintiles at all. And there's an ongoing argument. Even Prof G, Scott Galloway has been talking a lot about it. Peter Zion's been talking about it. Is the boomers want it all? Again, I am old, but I'm an old Gen Xer. I miss being a boomer by this much. Uh, but when you look at the census data from 2025, the housing survey data from the Census Bureau, uh, the over 65 crowd has a home ownership rate of 78.6%. The under 35 crowd has an ownership rate of 36%. So the boomers uh, own more than double or have an ownership rate more than double the emerging generation. Okay. So who is this going to help? I don't think it's going to help who you think it's going to help. And I kind of broke this six ways down from Sunday. Yeah, your first 20 years on a 50-year note is almost pure interest. That's we already talked about that and how you develop your equity. You're going to need 38 years to get 50% equity on a 50-year note. That doesn't bode well for the average buyer who thinks they're going to be accumulating wealth, because this is a thing in America. A lot of people, my wife and I do not do this. Our wealth is the stuff we have liquid in the bank. Our equities, our bonds, our metals, our cash, that's our wealth. We haven't realized a dime out of our homes. Okay, so we never count that in our wealth calculations. Could we add, if I sold this home because I bought it, so many years ago, I could probably easy add 1 million itself if I sold the home, but then where would I live? Okay. So the chasing the lotto ticket of how much equity is in your home and putting that into your wealth, if you haven't realized it, if you haven't cashed out your home, that money isn't real. Okay. So I recommend personally, don't count it. It's a false valuation. Now, if I'm going to cash out and move like I considered a couple of years ago and move to a new district, you know, on paper, I did the cash out, paying the taxes, capital gains taxes over the $500,000 limit. Yeah, here's another reason you want my houses to be more affordable. Take the fucking limit off the capital gains when you sell the house. You know, if you're a corporation and you own a rental, there is no capital gains. If you're a dad, a head of household, or a mom, and you're trying to pay your bills, build equity in a home, as soon as you get more than $500,000 of equity in your home, that's taxable. They're not getting rid of that cap so you can move your money to another home and spend it all without the capital gains. They're not going to do that. They're going to lie to you about a 50-year note instead. Oh, and here's another affordability thing. If you think the home mortgage deduction write-off has ever made housing more affordable, you would be completely wrong. Don't trust my word. Go read the Schilling report. Robert Schilling knows more about housing than any person alive. Okay. His study shows that your home mortgage deduction tax only made housing more affordable by juicing money into the system. I talked about that at the beginning. The more money you throw at housing, the more expensive housing gets. You want to make housing less expensive without crashing the housing market? You take a 20-year plan. Now, this is complicated, I know, and Congress tend to be a bunch of droolers who can't think long term. Okay. But you take a 20-year plan. 2026, you get 100% of your mortgage deducted interest. 27, you get 95. 28, 90, so on and so forth, until we phase the whole thing out 20 years from now. That would allow the money to get poured out of the system slowly, so you don't cause a ruckus in housing. You don't have maybe huge price drops. Okay, you're going to have huge price drops with this 50-year mortgage, or you're just going to have the rich buying up everything speculatively in the planet, and you're going to have no place to live. Okay, and I've been saying get rid of the home mortgage deduction write-off. I've been saying that now for 25 years. Schilling's report, what was that, about 8, 9, 10 years ago? Completely proved it for me. Should have proved it to everybody. I mean, it's a great report. It does not do what you think it does. It simply injects cash into the system. The builders and the financiers want to suck back out of the system, not at a dollar. If you inject a dollar from the government or a government write-off scheme into housing, the builder and the bank want $1.50 out of that dollar. The deduction write-off of your mortgage does not do anything but make your life more expensive. Because they can raise the sale price because you have room in your monthly debt to income ratio. So they're just going to make everything more expensive. They're going to raise your mortgage rate. They're going to raise the price of the home. They're going to raise the cost of building the home, whatever it takes. They're going to make more money because you're injecting more money into the system artificially. The home mortgage deduction is its biggest fault. It artificially massages the value and the price and the transactional cost of dealing with home ownership. It's a false variable in the system that fucks up everything else in the equation. Excuse me, one minute. I have to blow my nose. Allergies are just. So you put in this false valuation and you put in these false numbers into your equation. You go, voila, we made everything cheaper. Then when you do the long-term studies, everything's gotten more expensive. Again, go back to the American Dream was assassinated in 1978. My essay, it's on my list to post there. There's a few down, but go find it. Okay. Home ownership, everything in society your car, your washing machine, the cost of college, the cost of grocery, everything went down 1955 to 1969. Admission cost into the middle class went down every year for 15 years. We didn't have 50-year loans, and we didn't have a mortgage write-off. These aren't solutions, people. These are cover-ups. These are hustles. These are dodges. These are schemes given to you by a con man felon, guy that's probably on the Epstein list too, guy who has a problem with women and little girls, wants to sell you a scheme, the same scheme they've already proven in studies that is completely false. The more you inject money into this housing system, the more expensive shit's going to get. Then you add tariffs. And you couldn't be happy with the 20% tariff that was already on Canadian lumber. You had to more than double the lumber tariff. Then you had to go after nickel, steel, aluminum, and copper. All your weatherproof metal has nickel coating on it, knuckleheads. Not only did you tariff nickel, you get into an argument with Indonesia, who mines and makes most of the nickel bulk. Then you get in a pissing contest with Canada. Over what? Canada being friendly to us, being a great neighbor? And now our lumber has never been higher against the mean dollar. The cost of constructing a home has never been higher. But you're going to replace it with a 50-year fucking note scheme? Okay, here's the summary as we go through the different categories of the housing system, from low-income buyers to the macro system itself. Here's who loses and why on a 50-year note scheme. Low-income buyers, they will never build equity. Already talked about that. They pay maximum lifetime interest, and most of them won't qualify for the loan under the scheme anyways. Get it? Look at your income distribution versus percentage of ownership rate. Okay. Middle class, what do they lose? Their perpetual refinancing? Gone. It doesn't exist anymore. You introduce 50s, you're never refinancing again. Your net worth is never going up. They're cutting you off at the knees while telling you they're doing you a favor. If the favor of the middle class is not allowing us to gain a net worth through home ownership, which, by the way, is the majority way people don't have any net wealth, is through their home, because you don't have 401ks. I told you about that a couple of videos ago, and several essays I've talked about this. Okay? Half of my generation, Gen X, has shit for retirement. They have the big egg ready for retirement. And they want to get rid of Social Security too, and Medicaid. You're talking about poverty in the elderly system that probably hasn't existed since the freaking Great Depression and Dust Bowl. That's their answer. Young workers, what do you lose? Well, you pay inflated prices supported by longer terms, and you pay those inflated prices across the damn board, from building costs to lifetime principal interest payments on the principal. Communities, what do you lose? Less stability, less generational wealth, less wealth transferred to the kids. I told you about this before, folks. The billionaires are now coming after the millionaires. They want their money too. This is what a 50-year note is about. Even if the family is very successfully, mom's a professional, dad's a professional, or they're techies, or, both parents are high income. Okay. Well, you get into a 50-year note, you're not going to pass down wealth to your kids like the last generation did. That's not even going to be possible. And what does the macro system lose in this 50-year note scheme? Um, the system starts getting into real problems because it's going to be so sensitive to rate changes. Okay, so many people won't qualify that would qualify now. They're pushed out of the market completely. Okay. Now, every time you jigger the rates, because now, the Federal Reserve rate is now this political tennis ball. We back and forth depending on what's going on and who's president. And now the wacko dear leader president we have now is making demands. He's trying to order what the interest rate should be. Okay. Order away, manipulate the rate at will. Every time you do, you have to recalculate everything downstream. That's going to be a hell of a lot more sensitive to small rate changes. Even this last quarter point, okay, which seems fishy. I'm not an economist, but the economy's pretty hot. So why are you lowering rates? But that aside, that's a problem in itself. But that aside, yeah, when you start doing that and you've got millions of 50-year notes sitting on the table, um, every time you have big moves in the rates, above a half a point. Yeah, you're going to see mortgage issuance stall because their table, their formula, their algorithm, and what approves a loan that just got wanked. Yeah, um, you have a total decay curve in family wealth, family accumulation, and net worth. And then you have all the downstream effects. As you're paying more and more and more, remember, on 600,000, you got $792,000 additional interest to pay on top of the 800 something thousand you had already paid. Okay, that payment to your 50-year mortgage takes money out of other aspects of a household's life. Are you saving for college now? No, or not like you did before, at least. Are you going to form a small business? You're going to start up your own company. A lot less of that because a lot less capital is available to the household. Um, are you going to retire early? No, everybody's going to be retiring later. And this is when I get, real frustrated. I could easily see, some Mr. Moneybags in a conference room under low lighting, telling them like, hey, we told them they can't retire. They have to work longer and longer and longer. So let's force them to work longer and longer and longer through a 50-year mortgage. What do you lose with a 50-year mortgage? The ability to retire at a reasonable age. Because the money you were saving into your 401ks has to go into your additional interest on principal now over a much greater time period. Remember, your interest is going to almost double. That's where your college funding for college tuition is going to go. And then your kids are going to get stuck in the usury system of student loans. If I did one thing right as a dad and I'm a parent, yeah, 50-year mortgage. Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. It is horrible. That's what I'm breaking down. Now, if you're not saving for your kids' college, they gotta get a student loan, which is usury. I wrote a whole essay, usury, the drug of the nation. Look it up. Okay. If I did one thing right as a parent, is I paid for all their colleges. 2 associates, 4 bachelors, 4 master's degrees, all paid directly. No loans. Nothing over my kid's head, nothing over my wife's head. Paid for 4 graduate schools, including a top conservatory, like top conservatory in the country and in the world. Okay. I didn't want the debt hanging over my kid's head. I basically paid for my wife's master's degree as a present for her being a great mama for 20 years raising our kids. So I said, if you want to go back to school, I'll pay for it all. And she did. Once the kids, started getting busy adulting. So she has a master's degree in museum studies now. Okay. And zero debt. So if I did one thing right, that was it. Yeah. And if you look at the distribution of wealth in this country, it's already starting to flatten out. It's very flat in the lowest quintile, and as you get up toward the highest quintile, you see this roller coaster ramp up. But that bulge that used to be in the middle, the middle class, the upper two, three, lower four category of um, how in the world did you do it? Oh, you mean paying off the college degrees? This is the funniest part. I don't have a college degree. I joined the army when I was 17. The reason I was able to do it, I was quite successful in the tech industry, and I saved a lot of money. I don't spend a lot of money on cars. I drive my cars an average of 12 and a half, 13 years. Um, I don't carry credit card interest, debt, none of that. So I made good money in the tech industry, and I saved and saved and saved and scrimped and saved some more. That's how I did it. And then, I told my daughter that if she ever meets Howard Schultz from Starbucks, she should give him a hug because I invested in Starbucks when it split multiple times, and that Starbucks stock is basically what paid for my daughter's college, her bachelor's degree. Fortunately, she went to Norway as a guest of the university for her master's degree or graduate school degree in ocean ecology or coastal ecology, marine biology, bachelor's, coastal ecology, master's. I had to pay for her living expenses while she was there and like her rent or food and stuff, but she was a guest of the university, so I didn't have to pay tuition. That was golden when I found that out because her younger brother's out of state tuition for a conservatory was six figures. So yeah. Um, yeah, and I could have gone on European vacations every year and spent the money. I could have bought a BMW instead of driving a Ford. There's a lot of ways I could have spent my money away. I just chose not to do it, starting at a very young age. Um, you know, it was two fortunate things. Once, when I was younger, my wife and I, came to terms with what financing for our house would be. We decided we would never carry credit card debt again, all that. And, you know, every time I had a big project and I got a big consulting check, I took a big chunk of that and I put it in savings. Um, then invested those things, including, like recently, like when my last child was going through uh, conservatory for his music graduate degree, I kept rolling CDs, because the CD rates are great. Once they got away from the free money con at the banks and they started paying us interest again. So I just started rolling CDs like crazy, and that helped a lot. I'll throw up in the comments of this when this post, I'll throw up some of the graphs I did, because you can really see the decays of return between 30, 40, and 50-year mortgage notes. The, the, when you see it in graph form, you're gonna go, oh yeah, that's super horrible. It ain't good. And I'm like, yeah, it's really sucky. And I also visualized a couple of the after 10, after 20-year things I've been talking about. The 7% APR at 600K to give a reference point. And when you look at the graphs, like total interest over the life of the note, you can start seeing that this is an extraction of wealth from what's left of the middle class, a complete extraction. This is not helping the first time buyer. This is not helping the middle class. This ties middle class into being stuck wherever they are now, because all your mobility is going to be raked away when they if they implement this crap. Now, how real it is to implementing it, I hope it's not. But my fear is everything deer comes out of deer leader's mouth. Somebody tries to make it happen. even the dumb shit, even the evil shit, the immoral shit, the illegal, the unconstitutional. Somebody's more than willing to do it for them. I'm sure somebody is more than willing to take um uh to take this 50-year note shit seriously and try to push it as a policy. And the whole thing, I'm so super paranoid since the housing collapse, the mortgage crisis, the credit lockup, 2007, 2009 era. Um, all I can see is this 50-year note is just a scheme to re-casinoize everything. It's a re-casinoization of the mortgage crisis, of the mortgage market, to create another crisis. And it doesn't make a damn bit of sense. And it just restocks the powder keg. The mortgage crisis, everybody and their brother saw it coming. I mean, obviously Michael Burry saw it in San Jose coming a lot. He made so much money shorting the whole damn thing. And that's a great movie, by the way. Christian Bale plays Dr. Burry and does a great job. Um, the movie isn't perfect as far as the facts of the mortgage crisis, but a majority of what they talk about in that movie is absolutely true. Yeah, God, I hope this doesn't happen. Only people with money will be bankers and insurance companies. Well, this is funny. I went in, it's funny you brought up insurance companies. So that's the next point I was going to go into is what the hell happens to the insurance markets? I'm trying to scroll down there to um, get to the insurance section because underwriting the loans become a problem. Uh, and insurance quickly becomes a problem. How do you insure these things? Because you can't insure them the way you're doing now at the cost you're doing now. So the insurance companies may not be the winners in this. The bankers, the mortgage issuers, hell yes. It's a scheme for people that are holding capital. Okay, is it going to be good for the insurance companies? Probably not. Because the first thing that's going to happen is we don't know how to relate the insurance cost to the longer period. That's not well defined right now. So what you're going to have is an escrow problem right out of the gate. Okay, your escrow cost, your title insurance, all that shit. Who knows how that's going to fluctuate? It's going to become stochastic. It's going to have a random pattern that's going to jump all over the place. How bad it's going to get, we're going to have to wait and see. It's going to be really hard to project that outward, even by a couple of quarters, because the underlying, framework just isn't there. The underlying knowledge that we're all dependent on 15, 20, and 30-year notes, not 40 and 50-year notes. Um, the insurance crisis, the insurance companies start losing tons of revenue because nobody's refinancing. I already said you're not going to have the equity in your home after the golden 12-year period. The first mortgage note average period in America. You're not going to have the equity in your note. It's not going to be there. Okay. Therefore, people will not resell, nor will they refi. Okay. You ain't reselling. You ain't refiing. Insurance companies aren't writing notes, aren't writing policies. They're not writing title insurance. They're not doing escrows. They're not making money. House could fall down by then. You would never get equity. Yeah. That, especially the way houses have been made since the late 90s. Like I watch a lot of the home inspectors on YouTube. Some of their shorts are hilarious. Before the accident, I did a lot of my own homework. I put in tile floors. I remodeled entire rooms, put in, installation, painted, did plumbing, electricity, did a lot of it. I can't physically do it anymore, so I have to hire people. So I know a little bit about working on your home. I actually know a lot. And so you see these homes that are built so shoddily, especially in the Southwest, Scottsdale, Vegas, Phoenix. Oh my God, that inspector down there, I don't know how he's keeping his insanity. You're seeing roofs where they missed every single nail through the roof panel, the roof plywood or particle board, whatever cheap shit they're using today, and they missed every single nail. The board isn't anchored to anything. Uh, roof studs in the attic don't align. They're not joined properly. Okay, first good thunderstorm and first gale force winds, that roof's coming off the house. Now you have a real problem. So yeah, could the house fall down on a 50-year note? Some of the way the shittier houses, these development homes get built, absolutely, yes. That's why I won't buy houses that are made in certain years. That's why I live in a house that was made in 1969. It was permitted in 69. They started it in 70. Um, yeah, it's just old enough where it doesn't have things like after 72, I think it is, like you have to have clean outs for all the plumbing runs. I don't have that because it was permitted in the 69. But even with some of the modern things that aren't in this house, just the overall build quality, like I've been through every space, attic, subfloor, the crawl space, everything. I've looked every part of this house. I don't see the problems I see in the newer builds in these development homes. Um, and yeah, if you're in a low quality build, is the mortgage issuer going to give you a 50-year note on a low quality build? And if you're living in a low quality build, what does your insurance company say about that? Okay. The answer to better homes is higher quality builds at a better price, not a 50-year note. This is silly stupid. Um oh, and if your quality of your build doesn't submarine you, the pocketing of saleability is going to just blow away some neighborhoods. Some zip codes, some, you know, zip codes +4 districts, they're going to see terrible things happen in their neighborhoods because you're going to have a pockets of insurability and everybody else. And if you can't get the insurance, like if you don't put enough down on your home mortgage, they're going to require you to get insurance. Okay. What happens when the insurance companies don't know what to do with these 50-year notes on top of climate change, on top of storm related damage, on top of this 50-year fiasco? This is all going to line up into problems with insurance and insurability. And that is going to be pocketed into districts. And once the insurance companies identify an area, basically redline a neighborhood because of insurance problems, to use an old term, those prices in that district, those home prices plummet. They fall off the chart. Not by a little, by a lot. And you're already seeing that in Florida, by the way. That Michael Beckalosh, I think his name is, the guy does the walk and talk in Florida, the real estate guy. Yeah, you're seeing homes down there go for 30% less than they did under the last sale. And the prices are still going down. Yep, like in Florida. Okay. Florida is going to be the epicenter, followed by Texas and California. The real problem with that, who is the 5 largest economies in America? 3 of them are Texas, Florida, and California. And they're going to run headlong into an insurance crisis. That's where we're heading. Um, yeah, and again, when you break this down by the effects on the quintiles of the economy, the quintiles of household income, who takes the biggest hit when the insurance starts being a problem? The lowest 2 quintiles, they get creamed. Okay, you don't even get into a 50-50 split until the 3rd quintile for impact. That means your first quintile, man, you could see bumps that make home ownership completely unaffordable if they will insure you at all. Because once they think they've got a pocket where they can't control their costs and they can't show the control of cost to the reinsurer, the underwriter of the system, all bets are off. The insurance system starts to crumble right before your eyes. If it starts to pocket, you're going to see like depressions in housing prices in certain districts. And once that collapse starts, it's going to be like the housing crisis. Where was this? In Ohio? You had houses in Ohio in 2009 that were listed at $1. $1. Happened in Arizona too. Prices fell near zero. in neighborhoods that people just once the mortgages and the foreclosures started, then you had more foreclosures because people didn't want to stay in a neighborhood that was collapsing. Then you had people just up and left, whether they were foreclosed on or not. You had complete subdivisions in Arizona empty in 2009, 10, that era. Okay. It's coming again. And it's coming because of the insurance collapse or insurance crisis, at least, is going to happen one way or another. But then you add this 50-year crap on top of it. Holy crap. Yeah, exactly. People are just going to chuck their keys, call the bank, chuck the keys in the mailbox, jump in the U-Haul, move to a different state. Yeah. Yep. Mortgage crisis part due. But it's going to have a lot more factors than just bad mortgages, and a casino op at the banks and at AIG, Lehman Brothers, the whole works. Yeah, you starve out equity as soon as the 50-year notes become popular. You starve out equity, you starve out mobility, you lower housing sales overall. You lower your lifetime leverage, and then once you're pricing affordability, risk, debt to income, all that matrix gets screwed up, and the mortgage issuers don't know what to do, then it's going to be negative selection, and it's going to be negative selections by ways a lot of people don't like to hear. Because I told you who owns homes: wealthy white people. Okay, who do you think the negative selections are going to affect? Is it going to affect the highest demographic of home ownership? No, no, it's not. It's going to impact them, but it's not going to affect them like the bottom tiers. And once you suck the money out of the system, not only do you lose the Wi-Fi and the resale to move on up, you also destroy Home Depot and Lowe's. Home Depot's and Lowe's is all about your HELOC. That's why they're so popular. Yes, you get your day-to-days, or you get you know, the first runs of supplies and tools you need for homeownership. Like every homeowner, you need a ladder. Okay, you got a bunch of windows, you need a squeegee and a squeegee bowl. Stuff you just need to buy to maintain your house, right? But a lot of a lot of the core of the big sales that come out of Home Depot and Lowe's, those are home remodels, folks. How do you pay for home remodels? With your HELOC, your home equity line of credit. When you don't have any equity, how do you get a HELOC, which they stopped issuing it already? You get where this is going? The 50-year mortgage literally sucks all the wind out of the system and hands double interest over term to the mortgage issuers. Screws everybody else. Oh, and what happened in 2008 to 2009 when people started putting their keys in their mailboxes and running away? Cities started to get in huge trouble because they're already on the brink of insolvency anyways. School districts, same thing. What do you do when they start seeing plummeting tax revenue because home values start to plummet? People start leaving again. It's a domino problem. You're not going to have. Yeah, that's what HELOCs are mainly used for, is repairs and remodels of homes. The other use, which is terrible, is people use their HELOCs to pay off their credit cards. Dumb, dumb. One, you should not be running up credit card debt like that. Credit card is a tool. It shouldn't be a personal loan. It's too expensive. Okay. I will say, because I've done this before, is loan the money to myself for a car and then pay it right back, because I get to write off the interest on the HELOC. I don't get to write off the interest on a car loan. Now, when you start adding like flood surges, king tide problems, weather problems, hail, massive hailstorms like the one that what was it, Arkansas? And Huckabee asked for money and Trump told her to go pound sand. Um, yeah, just more cost adding to the system, more that gets pulled out of the average household. And the changes will disrupt the system so fast, you won't be able to arbitrage the change. It will become chaos in some sectors, like escrows. They won't know to do it first, and escrows will get costly, and the variance of the cost, you won't know how bad it is till you get there. It, you want to make housing more affordable. Take the goddamn unnecessary tariffs off of China. Every consumer product. I mean, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, go to your hardware store, your local hardware store. Okay, pick up a box of any lighting that's made, turn it over. 8 or 9 times out of 10, made in China. Made in China with a massive import tax to the American consumer. Tools, plumbing, electrical fixtures, HVAC parts, all have tariffs on them right now. Look that up. Okay. So I was going to talk about something else today too, but I'm just going to leave it on one subject today because this is something that I think everybody's got to educate themselves on really fast and realize that this is just another Doge style dodge. It's a hustle. How can I screw you to pretend I'm helping you? This is another example. This is like the donut holes in Medicare. How can I screw certain people to pretend I'm properly funding and running this system? And when the underwriting gets screwed up, when the insurance gets screwed up, you know, and the thing is, we just recently went through the worst housing problem of the modern times. That wasn't that long ago. We're talking just what, 16, 17 years ago? Yeah, he did it on Canada too. There was already existing soft lumber tariffs on Canada and lumber. He more than doubled them. Then he put tariffs on where we get household components, lighting fixtures, HVAC parts, da da da. Then in every raw material that comes from around the world. There's tariffs on steel. That means nails. That means bolts. Aluminum, aluminum framing, aluminum junction holds, braces, beam reinforcements. Okay. Nickel, copper. Anything weatherized has nickel. Okay. Copper, we need that for wiring. Everything that involves building a home is more expensive thanks to Trump's tariffs. His idiotic, manic, whatever he's in the mood for. 100% tariffs this morning because I woke up and my balls ached. So 100% more tariffs. There's no policy here. There's just mania and chaos. And then they say, oh, I'm going to raise your prices across the board in home ownership. I'm going to almost double your interest over the life loan, but I'm doing you a favor. Can't you see the favor I'm doing? This is like the mob in the 60s. Did you see the favor I did by not burning down your deli? Yeah. The aluminum tariffs has caused an average of steel and aluminum, the tariff increases has caused a 50% price increase in everything. Metal roofing products, connectors, like I was talking, beam connectors, post connectors, the foundation connectors so your house doesn't pull up during a tornado. Um, HVAC cases, the coils. Okay. Anything that needs thermodynamic is going to be copper. Okay. Yeah, I've been saying, Pamela, you're right. I've been saying that for since the first administration. We don't have governance right now. We have a street gang manipulating the system, and the gang leader is dear leader porn star Humper, because he is. Everything about these guys remind me of the street gangs we were up against in the 80s and 90s, whether in Europe or here in America. They operate so close to a street gang, it's not funny. And I was kind of reinforced by in that idea. I was watching I forget if he was interviewing somebody or the other way around. I was watching Nick Gillespie from Reason Magazine, the managing editor, and he goes, "No, Trump is not Hitler, but he's certainly Tony Soprano." And I was like, "Yeah, I agree with that." And I said this before on the videos and other times that Hitler's not really a good analogy for dear leader, porn star Humper. The best analogy I can come up with is Slobodan Milosevic from Yugoslavia. Ruth Ben-Yet here on Substack and other places. She's a authoritarian expert. She says the biggest match for dear leader porn star Humper is Berlusconi, Silvio from Italy, which is, and I totally see her argument because Berlusconi was a corporate dictator, an ownership class dictator, and that's what Trump is. Okay. The reason I think Milosevic is a better match is dear leader's use of militia types as his enforcement arm. Like, I am convinced by seeing some of the shirts being worn in these balaclava masked ICE agents. They're wearing a lot of the shirts we saw at the other rallies. You know, the Proud Babies, the Boogaloo Boys. You know, militia fuckheads like the Patriot Front. Okay. I literally, I think they're being run by a street gang, and now they're actually hiring militia people to be their street gang. Okay. That's why I think Milosevic, because he had the Caucasian armed militias that basically turned into his terror troops. Okay. And when Yugoslavia turned into a total shit show, all rules were thrown out the window. And as we're seeing with the second term of dear leader and Ross Vaught and Stephen Miller, I love the way South Park Igored him. That's so funny. Yes, master. Yeah. What they're doing is so close to a RICO. But when you have a corrupt Department of Justice, that's the only thing that saved us under Nixon, was the Department of Justice wasn't totally corrupt. They had their problems, sure. But dear leader wholly owns the DOJ. And the DOJ is supposed to be an independent executive agency. There's a reason why it's supposed to be its own agency. Basically making their independent decisions based on a professional and ethical code that's written down. That's my biggest problem with that South Shore Avenue raid with helicopters and everything. The helicopters isn't what bothered me. What bothered me is their fucking policy says clearly in writing, you are not to restrain a minor below a certain age. And if you want to handcuff a 16 or a 17 or a 15 or a 16-year-old, you got to get a regional commander's permission to do so. That's written right in their own policies. So the street gang is screwing over the America, screwing over the society, the culture. Even though I'm an atheist, I'll say this a lot. They're even screwing over what they think Christianity is. Okay. They're screwing over the economy. But then they come up with this horseshit of a 50-year loan scheme and say, look, I solved all your problems. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. This is the long-term screw. This is how we plan to fuck you over time. Because I said this before, and it bears repeating right now. A lot of the policies we have is to make sure that the rich kid doesn't have competition growing up. The parents eliminated their competition, but now they're scared that if anybody wins at any level outside their little clique, they're at war. And that's why you saw Project 2025 form out the way it did. And I wrote that essay more than a year, August, the year before the elections. Okay. Warned you way before the elections what that document really was. That was to make sure we've already stratified the economy. We've already separated Rich Timmy from poor Bob. Okay. Now the parents of Rich Timmy want to make sure poor Bob is destroyed. Everything Bob does, the proceeds go to Tim. And they'll set up any devious scheme and policy to make that happen. The tax bill they passed was part of it. Give us $4 trillion more because we're not wealthy enough. We need to be subsidized by the working class taxpayer. Then they wrote Project 2025 and told you how bad they planned on screwing you over. Now they're telling you we're going to destroy your net worth. That little net worth that you thought you had, we're going to destroy that. We're taking that away from you over time. Because we're going to trickle it away from you. This is like the water torture thing. Just doing that over a long enough period of time, you will crack. Hell, they made the girl cry on Mythbusters after only a couple of minutes. And that was real. Okay. They're going to extract you. They're going to trickle. They're going to torture you over time. They're going to take everything and put it in their own pockets because they don't want poor Bob competing with Rich Timmy. That's why they don't want multifamily housing in some cities, because people that aren't as affluent as we are may move here, and that may take something away from Rich Timmy, my kid. So let's box everybody out. Okay. What do you think the $1 trillion payday is about? It's about them believing money belongs in one spot, their pockets, not yours. What does this 50-year mortgage scheme do? Take hundreds of thousands of dollars out of every single family's pocket that owns a home and hands it to a banker while raising their cost, while doing absolutely nothing that would actually reduce the cost of home ownership. Are you willing to get rid of the home mortgage deduction over time and get that false variable out of the system? No. You willing to drop that lumber tariff or that steel and aluminum, copper, and nickel tariffs so we can build homes cheaper? No. You're going to allow us to build satellite towns outside of the big cities so we can live more affordably and the businesses follow us to where we live? No. This is about extraction of wealth from the middle class. Again. Like I said in my last video, they don't pay estate tax. You only pay inheritance tax if your tax attorney is a fucktard. You don't pay taxes on your capital gains or your rigged capital gains like we do on income tax. Your home ownership rate is double the rest of every other quintile. Now your plan for the home ownership of everybody else is extract wealth from them. This is just another form of usury. The 50-year loan is just like student loans, just like 100% credit cards. 10-year car notes, they're usury. You're just putting the average working American family behind the eight ball, deeper into debt. Less money can accumulate over time. You stay poorer longer. Rich Timmy gets distanced from poor Bob. Now they're making it policy. And if anybody that argues with you that this is a good thing, ask them when they failed arithmetic. How many maths course did you fail in your life to get to that answer? This is a scheme to make housing a purview of the upper first quintile of the economy, the top 20% of the economy, and nobody else. This is the latest form of rent seeking that will turn into the worst form of usury. Usury, a drug of a nation. Go read that essay. Okay. I had another topic today. I'll probably make that an essay. I'll write that up later. Um, it's a repeat topic, but I think we have to readdress it. Until next time, think about it and do spend some time thinking about these issues. Okay. When they're laying down this crap and they're giving you these platitudes wrapped up in a bow, telling him how, oh, we're just helping the little guy. No, they hate our guts. And it's not just the poor person they want to immigrate who happens to be brown. They loathe them, sure. But you think they like you and you ain't the ultra wealthy? No, you have a wrong picture of what's going on in society right now. Okay. So until next time, please think about it. I'll see you soon. Peace out.